Rock legend Ozzy Osbourne is gone, and the world is in shock. But it was Sharon Osbourne's emotional final words, whispered at his casket, that broke the hearts of millions. What did she say that silenced the entire room? Why did she beg for forgiveness in front of family and friends? And what was Ozzy hiding in his final days that only Sharon knew? Stay with us, because what you're about to hear will leave you stunned. The world of rock and roll has gone silent. The Prince of Darkness, the iconic voice behind Black Sabbath, and one of the most electrifying performers in music history, Ozzy Osbourne, is dead at 75. But it wasn't just the news of his passing that left fans devastated. It was what followed. At a private, tear-filled funeral service held in Los Angeles, Sharon Osbourne, his wife of more than 4 decades, delivered a tribute so raw, so emotional, that even the toughest rock legends in attendance were seen wiping away tears. Her words, part confession, part farewell, weren't just a goodbye. They were a soul-bearing message to the world, and to Ozzy himself. In this video, we'll walk you through exactly what happened in Ozzy Osbourne's final days, from the medical crisis that led to his death, to the shocking truth behind Sharon's public breakdown. You'll hear details from the funeral that weren't shared on the news. We'll reveal the secret note Ozzy left behind, the surprising celebrity who was banned from attending, and how Sharon's tribute might have finally exposed the deepest regret of their decades-long marriage. You won't believe who was there. You won't believe who wasn't. And when you hear what Sharon said beside her husband's casket, it'll change how you see their story forever. This isn't just a tribute. This is a final chapter written in tears, secrets, and legacy. Let's begin. Ozzy Osbourne, once the wild, untamed face of heavy metal, had spent years battling health challenges in private. But in his final weeks, those closest to him noticed a shift. It wasn't just his body that was failing, it was his spirit. Sources close to the family revealed that Ozzy had become noticeably quiet and withdrawn in the last 2 months of his life. The once fiery frontman who howled through stadiums now barely whispered at the breakfast table. He stopped attending his physical therapy sessions, began refusing medication, and told his nurse on more than one occasion, "I just want to sleep and not wake up." Even Sharon, who had stood by him through addiction, relapses, cheating scandals, and nearly fatal health scares, felt something was different this time. Ozzy's eyes, she said, held a kind of calm sadness, as if he was already saying goodbye without words. According to an anonymous source inside the home, Ozzy had quietly called for each of his children one by one, Jack, Kelly, and Amy, and held private, emotional conversations with them. No cameras, no crew. Just whispered words, tight embraces, and long silences that said more than any lyrics ever could. But perhaps the most heartbreaking moment came when Sharon reportedly walked into Ozzy's room one evening and found him sitting in his chair, staring at a photo of their family from the 1990s, the chaotic but beautiful years, as Ozzy called them. Tears silently streamed down his face. He turned to her and said, "I'm sorry for what I couldn't fix, but thank you for staying." That night, Sharon canceled all her interviews and public appearances. She didn't say why, but those close to her say she stayed by his side, holding his hand for hours, barely sleeping. And just days later, Ozzy Osbourne slipped away quietly in his sleep. No screaming, no chaos, no spotlight, just peace, in the arms of the woman who saw him at his worst and loved him anyway. The Prince of Darkness, known for his thunderous stage entrances and chaotic life, left the world in the most unexpected way, silently, and with no media circus surrounding his departure. But what shocked fans and even some family friends more than Ozzy's death was the funeral itself. Or rather, the kind of funeral it turned out to be. Despite being one of the most iconic and influential rock legends of all time, Ozzy Osbourne's funeral was a small, strictly private affair, just immediate family. No cameras, no public viewing, no rock star tributes, no fireworks. Just a few chairs in a private English countryside chapel. Sharon Osbourne made the call. In her words, he gave the world everything. Let us have this one moment just for us. That moment was both heartbreaking and intimate. Sources say the entire ceremony lasted no more than 45 minutes, but what was said inside that chapel left every guest emotionally gave a gut-wrenching eulogy. He didn't talk about Ozzy the rock star. He spoke about Ozzy the father, the flawed man who tried to become better even when he kept falling. Jack cried openly as he revealed how Ozzy had apologized just weeks before dying for being an absent father during the hardest years. Jack ended his speech by whispering, "You did your best, Dad." And that was enough. Kelly Osbourne, who had often shared her own struggles with addiction and recovery, mirroring her father's past, stood up next. She brought the chapel to tears as she described her father as the loudest man in the room and somehow still the most misunderstood. She said she'd never forget the final voice note Ozzy sent her 2 days before his passing, telling her, "You've got your mom's fire and your dad's madness. You're unstoppable. I love you, always." But perhaps the most haunting moment came from Sharon herself. She stood, stone-faced, lips trembling. She didn't read a speech. She didn't even cry at first. Instead, she walked to his casket, placed one hand on it, and softly said, "This wasn't supposed to be the end, but maybe this is the peace you never found in life. Sleep now, my darling." The room was silent, not a single dry eye. Some say even the priest had to pause to compose himself. And when it was time to lower Ozzy into the ground, a solo violin played a stripped-down instrumental version of "Mama, I'm Coming Home." Sharon chose that herself. She said it was the song that meant the most to him, the one that made him weep every time it came on. And then, he was gone, buried beneath the quiet English sky, far from the crowds, the stadiums, and the screaming fans. Ozzy Osbourne's death was a blow, but what came next shook the family and fans to their core. As expected, Sharon Osbourne was set to inherit the bulk of his estate, estimated at over $220 million. But when the legal documents were unsealed just days after the funeral, what emerged was a firestorm of controversy, betrayal, and secrecy. According to close sources who spoke under anonymity, Ozzy had rewritten his will only 5 months before his death, without informing most of his inner circle. The changes he made were radical and deeply personal. For starters, Sharon didn't receive as much as everyone expected. While she was still designated as the executor of the estate and given their shared properties, what stunned many was that over $80 million had been siphoned into a private trust for someone no one had heard of publicly, a woman named Margot. Yes, you read that right. Margot, a mysterious woman from Ozzy's past, who, according to rumors, was part of a secret relationship Ozzy maintained during the late 1980s. And it gets wilder. That same woman allegedly had a child, a now-grown man in his 30s, who Ozzy admitted in a sealed letter to be his biological son. The will contained a handwritten note from Ozzy to this unknown son, which read, "I was never the man I should have been for you, but no one will silence your truth now. You're my blood. This is your legacy, too." The letter reportedly left Sharon furious and in disbelief. Multiple insiders claim she had no knowledge of this son until the will was revealed, and even considered challenging the legality of the updated document. But under UK law, a notarized final will supersedes all others, and Ozzy had made sure it was ironclad. And it doesn't stop there. Another jaw-dropper was the sudden disappearance of $30 million from an offshore account in Ozzy's name. Investigators are still trying to trace it, but insiders suggest Ozzy may have gifted it off the books before his passing, possibly to fund secret medical treatments, or to support his alleged hidden family without scrutiny from the public or press. The rest of his estate was split between Jack, Kelly, Amy, his daughter from his first marriage, and even Louis, the son of his first wife Thelma's second marriage, whom Ozzy still supported. But what Ozzy did not leave raised just as many eyebrows as what he did. Zakk Wylde, his longtime friend and bandmate, left nothing. Some of his grandchildren, omitted from the final draft. His longtime manager and producers, not a single mention. The secrecy of the will was so intense that a gag order was reportedly placed on all legal staff involved. Only a few pages were leaked to the media, but even that was enough to start family infighting and ignite a wave of lawsuits and bitter accusations. Fans online were divided. Some praised Ozzy for making peace with a son he never acknowledged publicly, while others accused him of betraying Sharon, who stood by him through his darkest years of addiction. Another shockwave was coming. The world was still grappling with the shock of Ozzy's mysterious will when Sharon Osbourne did the unthinkable. She sat down for a private, unfiltered interview just one day after his funeral. No makeup, no glam team, no stage lights, just her and the truth. What Sharon revealed rocked the legacy of Ozzy Osbourne even more than the hidden will. She began by talking about the weight of watching someone she loved slip away piece by piece, not just physically, but emotionally and mentally. Ozzy wasn't afraid of dying, Sharon said. He was afraid of what he'd done while he was alive, of what might come back to haunt him. And then came the confession. According to Sharon, just 72 hours before his death, Ozzy asked to be alone with her. Despite being hooked to machines, weakened, and barely able to speak, he asked her to turn off the monitors and shut the door. That's when he whispered something she said she'll never forget for the rest of her life. "I did something, years ago, something no one ever found out about. If it ever comes out now, just know I'm sorry. I didn't mean to ruin everything." Sharon said she froze. It wasn't about another affair. It wasn't about drugs. It was darker. When pressed for details in the interview, she hesitated, but what she said next was chilling. He spoke of a night in 1989, a party, a friend who went missing. He thought it would be swept under the rug, but he always believed he might have played a part. While Sharon never explicitly said what exactly Ozzy was confessing to, speculation exploded online. Some claim he may have been referring to a famous UK club incident, long buried in silence, involving the mysterious disappearance of a roadie who was allegedly with Ozzy that same night. That man was never found. Police at the time called it a probable runaway. But Ozzy's vague final words sent fans and conspiracy theorists spiraling into that decades-old case again. Was Ozzy carrying guilt over something he did? Or something he witnessed? Sharon didn't confirm anything, but her silence said more than words. In the interview, her eyes welled with tears as she admitted, Ozzy never fully forgave himself for who he had been before sobriety. He was haunted by the other Ozzy, the demon inside him that fame and drugs created. She added, "He used to say, 'Sharon, I hope God doesn't recognize me as that man when I get there. I don't want to go to hell.'" It wasn't just a metaphor. According to Sharon, Ozzy had dreams, nightmares, of being chased by a figure with no face who called him James instead of Ozzy. James being Ozzy's legal first name, John Michael Osbourne. It was like someone was trying to drag the real him out from under the legend. The confessions didn't stop there. Sharon then revealed that Ozzy had written multiple sealed letters, some to his children, and one addressed simply, "To the one I hurt most." Sharon still doesn't know who that letter is for, but confirmed she hasn't opened it. What's even more shocking, Sharon said that Ozzy left behind a collection of video diaries. Over 60 hours of personal recordings on tape, filmed sporadically over the last 2 decades. In them, he reportedly talked to the camera as if it were his final audience, admitting things he never wanted the world to hear until he was gone. The tapes are now locked in a vault. Sharon has refused to release them. But insiders say Netflix, HBO, and even BBC have already made offers worth millions for exclusive rights. And fans are demanding it. They want the real story. Was Ozzy trying to make peace? Was he warning the world? Or was this his final act of rebellion? A rock star's last roar from the grave. And there you have it. Ozzy Osbourne's final act wasn't a screaming performance or a raucous festival farewell. It was a quiet moment of love, legacy, and tears that left fans around the world heartbroken. Sharon Osbourne's tribute didn't just honor a rock legend, it unveiled the tender core behind the Prince of Darkness. Her words painted Ozzy not as just a stage icon, but as a devoted husband, father, and soul deeply misunderstood by the media, yet adored by those who truly knew him. The media had always chased the wild side of Ozzy, his biting bats, his onstage chaos, his rehab stints, but Sharon's final words brought forward the side most fans never saw. The man who cried watching his daughter sing, the man who asked for forgiveness in silence, the man who always came back home no matter how dark his world got. Whether you knew him as the Black Sabbath frontman, the reality TV dad, or just a misunderstood legend trying to survive fame, Ozzy Osbourne left behind more than music. He left a legacy of resilience, raw emotion, and a rock and roll journey that will echo. What are your favorite memories of Ozzy Osbourne? Did his music get you through a tough time? Were you one of the millions who followed his reality show? Shocked by the chaos but staying for the heart? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's celebrate his life, his madness, and the humanity behind the legend. Don't forget to like this video if Ozzy's story touched you, and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss more deep dives into the lives of the icons you thought you knew. And hit that notification bell, because the truth, it's not always loud like a guitar solo. Sometimes it's hidden in the quiet goodbye. Rest in power, Ozzy Osbourne. You were more than a rock star. You were a storm the world will never forget. Love.